Mambo Vipi, what's happening? My name is Anyiko Owoko and I am a lover of arts, culture and everything African. And here we grant you front row access to your favorite celebrities, creators, the biggest personalities and industry experts. Come with me, you're now a VIP. This is what to expect on this week's episode.
I ended up in publishing and I love it here because it helps me to help grow the industry, to develop the industry and become a change maker for the music industry. Music licensing is basically granting the rights to someone to use your music for various purposes.
For me, I would say I'm a bit of an outlier. I really didn't say I'm going to focus on creating music for film or anything. I just found myself amongst friends who were transitioning from DJing into producing film. And the opportunity for me was there and I just jumped on it. It was just a natural progression. My big break, I would say, came with Nairobi Half-Life. That was the first time I got into the motion side of the business. But earlier, I'd been working on small projects here and there, mostly short films here and there.
Whenever money is being made, you need to be paid for that. And if you want to use anything that is copyright protected, you need to ask for permission or pay for a license. So you make sure that if I'm using any song, either I have the permission from the owner or I have a license I have paid for to use that music.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to VIP Access. It's always an honor to have you here with us as we continue to discuss ways of moving our industry forward. When we talk about making a living from music, most artists immediately think of touring, shows, merchandise, or even just music streaming, because that's where the music feels most immediate. But beyond this stage lies one of the most powerful and still misunderstood income streams in the music industry: music licensing and publishing. That is why we're discussing licensing your sound for ads, film, and TV on the episode this week. Remember, season 5 of my podcast VIP Access is based on the Industry Talks series and events that we've been hosting at the Goethe Institute in collaboration with the Goethe Institute Nairobi. So I'd like to share a little bit about what Industry Talks is about. This is a curated conversation series that captures the realities shaping Kenya and Africa's creative industry through candid, solution-driven panel discussions and workshops. We're now on our 3rd year, and since the very beginning, we'll be bringing together artists and industry practitioners to interrogate what sustainability, growth, and success truly looks like, particularly for independent creatives and artists navigating an increasingly complex and shifting ecosystem. At its core, Industry Talks centers sustainability, ownership, professionalism, and ecosystem thinking, equipping creatives with the tools, language, and frameworks needed to build long-term, resilient careers. Now, back to the show this week. Music licensing for ads, film, and TV. We're going to have a 2-part conversation discussing what does music licensing actually mean? How do publishing, royalties, and sync work together? Why is there still such a disconnect between artists and film, TV, and advertising producers? And what does it really take for your music to be licensed in today's fast-moving digital media landscape? If you've ever asked how songs end up in films, commercial, or TV series, or why some artists earn long after the music is released, this episode is going to lay a framework. Joining me on the podcast this week are 3 industry experts who sit at the intersection of music, media, and intellectual property. Shiro Mwendwa has worked with Shia Publishing Africa, and she will be bringing her insights into publishing administration, sync placements, and neighboring rights across the continent. Eric Musyoka, the award-winning producer and sound engineer who is actually the sound designer of the VIP Access intro and outro jingles, will also be joining us on this episode. He will be sharing practical examples and his experience from scoring and producing for major films, TV, and global media platforms. I also have Sharon Chahale Wata, who's the Deputy Director at the Kenya Copyright Board, and she will be grounding our conversation in the legal frameworks that protect creators and enable sustainable careers. Let's get into it.
So my name is Anyiko Owoko, and welcome to the Goethe Institute Auditorium. This is the second edition of our Industry Talk series. We're discussing writing music for TV and film, and we thought it would be nice to follow up a conversation about writing music for film and TV with now licensing music for TV, film, and advertisements. That's what we're going to be discussing today, and I'm very much honored to be amongst professionals in the field of music licensing and publishing. I am the curator and moderator of this specific series, and so today we'll be talking a lot about music licensing and opportunities for artists to unlock their revenue. I would also like to send a special shout out to the Kenya Copyright Board because they have collaborated with us for this particular series. We have an officer from the Kenya Copyright Board. So I will let the panelists introduce themselves, and then I also have an introduction that I want to say about you guys.
Good evening. My name is Eric Musyoka. I'm a sound engineer, music producer, and entertainment businessman. So I deal with anything in the entertainment business. So I've been doing this for the last 27 years. Don't calculate my age. Yeah, so film projects, documentaries and stuff. And I founded Decimal Records or Decimal Media. So with our primary focus on media and pretty much anything entertainment.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Shiro Mwendwa. I had a love-hate relationship with the music industry. I worked with music many years ago, and then I left. I was just over it and said, I'm never going to work in music again in my life. And then about 3.5, 4 years ago, music came knocking again. So I found myself in a completely different field I'd never been in before. I know most of you here should have heard of music publishing. So I found myself in music publishing. I'd never heard of, I knew publishing was writing books, publishing books and the like, but I ended up in publishing, and I love it here because it helps me to help grow the industry, to develop the industry and become a change maker for the music industry. And I'm so excited to be here to speak with you, maybe hopefully teach you a little bit about how music licensing works to help you monetize your music a bit more.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sharon Wata. I am an IP lawyer, currently the Deputy Director at Kenya Copyright Board. I have been in the copyright space for 18 years this year. Please don't calculate my age also. Like Musyoka said, by the Musyoka niko na calculate yako. I also teach part-time at the university, Testa Law School. And incidentally, my last unit I taught was music licensing and agreements. But this year I didn't take a class. I have been a copyright prosecutor. So your potential infringers ningewakutana na nyinyi kotini, but you are also potential clients mungekuta complain. I also sing in my church, and I have sung with a few groups, gospel. Yeah, but I do that more as ministry and a hobby than work. So my work, I'm your copyright lawyer. So we are here for you today. I'm open to sharing and also interacting with you when we are done. Interact with us, ask the questions, and whenever you have an issue, any legal issue, you can talk to me about it. But legal issue, your copyright, see a shamba, see a relationship, please. Your copyright. I'll be here for you today. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Asante. So I just want to get straight into it. I'll just read a little bit of an introduction about our topic of discussion. So there's still very little knowledge in the industry regarding the importance of music licensing and publishing. And in the hierarchy of activities in the industry, artists still focus a lot on touring, merchandise because of the fast income. However, royalties, publishing, and sync licensing are three of the most powerful ways artists can guarantee long-term revenue. There's a major disconnect between independent artists and, for instance, TV and film productions or producers when it comes to licensing music. So how do you get your song placed in a film or in a commercial? What makes a track attractive for licensing? I mean, we'll be breaking that down even with Musyoka, also from a perspective of a music producer. And how do you navigate the ever-changing landscape? We'll be breaking that down while exploring the mechanics of music licensing, sync placement, and the business side of the industry. We also want to talk about contracts and infringement. If you find that your copyright has been infringed, what do you do? What is the mandate and what's the role of Kenya Copyright Board? And maybe I will start right from there, Sharon. In a few words, what is copyright? Could you kindly break down what copyright is? And then Shiro, maybe you can break down for us what music licensing pertains.
Thank you. So copyright is just a legal term that we use to describe the rights that you get as a creator for your works. And your works must be literary works, meaning like books, what is written, poetry, spoken word, whatever is written, even musical lyrics, that's a literary work. Then we have musical works. Of course, you know what musical works are. There's the lyrics, there's the sound recording. And if you have translated it into a video, then that's an audiovisual work. It's still covered under copyright. And then you have artistic works. So our photographer Jama today, that's an artistic work, a photograph. And copyright would now cover the photographer unless the work is under a contract of employment or somebody has commissioned you to do work. And then nowadays also it covers computer programs and software. So the guys that create computer programs and apps, they're also covered under copyright. It also covers architectural designs. Even craft work, yeah? Carvings, basketry, weavery, whatever you do, like if you make things out of metal, artistic work, that is still covered under copyright. So this is just a legal term describing the rights that you get as the creator. And what rights? You have the right to control who uses that work and how it is used. You also have the right to get money whenever that work makes any money. You also have the right to be known as the creator of that work. So the producer, Musyoka, will tell you, if he's produced something and he sees it somewhere and it's put Sharon, he'll be up in arms because he wants to be known as the person who has produced that work. So the rights copyright is giving you control the reproduction, that is making many copies of your work. Initially with music, we talked about CDs. Now we are online. So after streaming and posting something online is taken to be reproduction, like you're making a copy of that song. And then you control adaptation, translation. So if you have a song in Swa, someone wants to translate it to English, that right is you to control. They have to ask for your permission. Adaptation, if you have a book maybe, and someone wants to make it into a movie, you also control that right. You also control the right that is called communication to the public. Communication to the public could be even through broadcast. Broadcast is another right, but they marry with communication to the public. You're communicating your work to the public. So if it's a song, you're communicating it to the public. Again, remember now we are mostly online. So ukiweka kitu online, ukistream, you're communicating it to the public. Alafu kuna ingine inaitwa public performance. Public performance could be, maybe I sing in a band and I'm performing in a restaurant, in a space, yeah? I'm having a concert hapa tu Tao and I'm performing. That is taken to be public performance. it is the owner that controls those rights. And the whole idea of copyright is that you be acknowledged for creating this work, but also whenever money is being made, you need to be paid for that. And if you want to use anything that is copyright protected, you need to ask for permission or pay for a license. So you make sure that if I'm using any song, either I have the permission from the owner or I have a license I have paid for to use that music. So in a nutshell, that is what copyright entails.
Thank you. Shiro, before you speak, I'd just like to read a little bit about who Shiro is and the work that she does and publishing catalog owners. As a former production manager, she's collaborated with the legendary filmmaker Clarence Peters, contributing to globally acclaimed music videos for artists like Burna Boy, Whiskey, Tiwa, Sauti Soul, Diamond, and Stone Boy. And she's as well been part of award-winning ad campaigns from across the continent. So, Shiro, could you maybe tell us about your role at Shia Publishing, then also break down for us music licensing, and also your role between the two countries?
My role at Shia has been as the head of creative and licensing. That was up until January 2025. So head of creative and licensing means I was in charge of all things that had to do with synchronization, where your music is used in film, TV shows, advertising, gaming, anywhere where music needs to be used. So as a publisher, an artist signs on with a publishing company, for example, like Share Publishing. So my department's work is to make sure that aside from royalty collection, you're getting extra value anywhere that needs music. Make sure we're plugging in your music. We're pitching and just making sure that you're earning extra revenue from your music. And from January 2025, I've taken on a different role where I'm mostly artist-facing A&R across Africa. So I wanted to be closer to home. And it's better for artist relationships. It's better for signing artists and discovering talent. When you're closer and you're able to move around easier, you're not encompassed in one place. So music licensing, in a nutshell, is basically, I think Sharon even mentioned, they talked about it, it's allowing or giving the right to someone to use your music. So if it's TV, a film they're making, if it's an advert, if it's a content creator, anywhere where there's music being used, if it belongs to someone, if it's not public domain means like anybody can use it, doesn't really have an owner. But if it's not public domain and somebody is claiming rights to that music, you need to have the right to use that music. So music licensing is basically granting the rights to someone to use your music for various purposes.
Musyoka, I think a lot of people know that name. If you've been conversant with the music industry, you'll have heard about Eric Musyoka. Like, as a music producer, how did you transition to working with various companies, TV productions, films, and getting into the music licensing space?
I mean, it's just a natural progression for most music producers to become composers. And I would say it's just an issue of when the opportunity comes, when you have a director or a producer that believes in your sound, in your vision, and in the style of music that you're working on. For me, my big break, I would say, came with Nairobi Half-Life. That was the first time I got into the motion side of the business. But earlier, I'd been working on small projects here and there, mostly short films here and there. As I said, it's a director who you've worked with, mostly a friend. I mean, for me, I would say I'm a bit of an outlier. I really didn't say I'm going to focus on creating music for film or anything. I just found myself amongst friends who were transitioning from DJing into producing film. And the opportunity for me was there, and I just jumped on it. So it was just a natural progression for me. I can't say I said maybe one day I'll stop making albums and jump into movies. It was just a case of the opportunity is here, the talent is there, let's see where it goes. And then you just grow into it slowly over time. And for me, the big break came with Nairobi Half-Life. And that was like I'd been doing scoring and music placement for, I would say, about a year or two, because I started around 2008, 2009. Then the Half-Life opportunity came in 2011, because if you know how the program for One Fine Day Film works, they take guys into a classroom, they train them, and then they graduate them into professionals. Two of the guys had been shooting music videos for my artist, and they managed to be in the program for Nairobi Half-Life. So that's how they recommended me to be in that space. Another thing, I used to do location recording, because sometimes you stay so much in the studio, you need some downtime. You don't want even to see an artist. You want nothing to do with keyboards and guitars and all that stuff. So I dabble in sound recording for, let me just brag a bit, high-end clients. Yeah, so I had a friend who was contracted to work on a project for the late Anthony Bourdain, for those of you who are familiar with cooking shows and stuff. So we went to film in Kibera, and the studio that we were filming in is where Steve Osimpoboy also records. So when I walked in, I'm swinging a boom, then the director, all of a sudden, nobody's paying attention to the director because Musyoka has walked into our studio. So the director asks his driver, why are they fussing about that guy? So, of course, he was told what I do. The next minute, I left the Nissan, I was put in a Prado, and that's how Weka Weka ended up in CNN. So it's an issue of opportunity. You don't plan for it. It's a natural transition if you're in the music business.
Okay, so we're talking about long-term revenue, and you're someone who, from where you sit, you've been on both sides, you've produced artists back then when music streaming wasn't even a thing, and then now we've transitioned to music streaming, and now the industry is also moving fast into making music for TV and film. So if you look at the revenue artists can potentially make from streaming music, just from traditional avenues and licensing your music for TV and film, how do you compare and contrast?
For streaming, I would say it's consistent. It's not a lot, but it's consistent. It's something you can plan around. With licensing, it's pretty much a potluck situation. For example, when Hahe was used in Nairobi, Hahe is one of my most licensed songs. I think it's on 3 or 4 films. I've made more money from the licensing, like ridiculously more than the streaming side. The stream is there, yes, but it's just slow but consistent. With licensing, that song is an outlier. There are other songs that are just licensed like once and, it's gone. Yes, the checks are usually bigger when it comes to licensing, but the streams are consistent and it's always there over time.
Thank you. Sharon, I wanted to ask about the Kenya Copyright Board. How do you protect right holders? Like if I'm an artist, if I'm a creative, if I'm a musician, and I've registered to Kenya Copyright Board or I haven't registered, how can you protect me? How do you protect artists?
Okay, one of the ways we protect your work is registration. Because registration is not a must, but it helps you to speak to ownership. And whenever there's a dispute, then it's easier to prove ownership. It's like buying a shamba and you get a title, or buying a car and you get a logbook. If someone comes to claim this is mine, then it's easier for you to claim ownership. But also if you find people who want to say license your song, they want to know you're the owner. And what other proof of ownership would you have unless you're big and everybody knows you, you're Sauti Sol, you're whoever. If you're just a normal artist, then those are some of the ways you can use to prove that. But also, we do enforcement. That is another of our mandate. That means that whenever there's an infringement, somebody can come to us and make a report, and we are able to deal with the issue. If it's a criminal matter, we have copyright inspectors that are gazetted, and the Act has mandated them to go into a premise, to inspect, to seize whatever is infringing. So they're able to do that for you. Some of the work we have done, we work with publishers a lot, book publishers. Someone will say our book is being infringed. So we will go into the premise, pick those pirated books, and we see the matter through. I told you guys I've been a copyright prosecutor. We were actually doing prosecution ourselves. until the office of DPP decided to revoke delegated prosecution for everyone. Many institutions were doing that, but they were having challenges. Some were using non-lawyers, some were aiding corruption. So they are like, no, let this go back to DPP. So that means we have to work with those prosecutors whenever they have copyright matters that arise. We also do mediation. If there's a dispute, say between artists, and it is something you can sit down and sort out, that doesn't have to go to court. Because remember, court is long, court is tedious, court is costly. But the legal staff we all have a master's in IP, and we are court-annexed mediators. So we're able to put the artists together, sort out the issue. Recently, we mediated a matter with Samido and another artist, Mugithi artist. This artist was claiming Samido had taken his song, and we work together with PPMC, Permanent Presidential Music Commission, so they're able to analyze a song for you and give you a report, and they'll tell you the lyrics are different or the melody, whatever. So we're able to analyze and see this is similar, it is not similar, so we're able to mediate such a dispute. And I remember when we issued a report to Samido, I think he posted it online. And I'm on a group, I think it is Nonini, that came and said, I didn't know Kekobo can do this, all this while. Yeah, but that is one of the things that we do. Then we offer training for any group of creatives that need the training. You only need to ask. Our trainings usually are free, but we are able to train. One of the gaps we realized is that copyright information and, let me say, understanding of it is not so much even among creatives themselves. A creative may not even know what their rights are and when they're infringing on another person's rights. And half the time we find that most of us, when creating, we have infringed. I don't remember who I was talking to today, and I was saying, one of the things I realized, like most artists don't know, is that you need permission to do a cover song. And it always amazes me that artists don't know that I'll just do a cover song and put it online and write their cover by Sharon. And I don't have the permission. But you need permission to do a cover song. And it sounds obvious to me, but I realize that to many artists, it is not. And I'll give an example. If you know Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, most of us don't know it is a cover, that the owner was Anyiko.
Dolly Parton?
Yes. But if you hear the version for Dolly Parton, where it is some country, Muzungu like country, yeah? And then the version for Whitney is so different. And the version for Whitney became more famous and it became big. But Dolly Parton was earning royalties from that cover. And that comes through licensing, yeah? She was able to license that song, or you can license or assign it, so you can sell it or license it. But that one earned her a lot of money. So I realized there are things that sound obvious or simple, but many of the artists don't know. Many creatives don't know. So a part of our job also is to conduct trainings. And all it takes is if artists put themselves together and request, we would definitely come and do it for free. Oh, let me mention also the registration of your copyright is also free for now. It had a fee, but then there was a government directive that we need to use the government pay bill, and that became complicated with our portal because it's through a portal.
How much was it before?
Before it was 1,000. We put it down to 100 per work. If it's a song, 100, but now it's free. Yeah.
So if I have released an EP, do I need to register the EP, or do I have to register individual songs of the EP for the musicians?
You have to register an individual song because it's a portal that you upload the song, and you can't do that with the album. So you have to register an individual song. But also remember, every individual song is different. So if someone wanted to use one of your songs in the album for an advert, you won't license the whole album. You will license the song only. So you have to upload each song individually, yeah. Each work is separate. Each song is a different work on its own.
And are artists registering their music?
Yes.
What's the majority of the content that's being registered for copyright?
Oh dear, I wish I had my computer. I would actually show you the statistics because Porto can show me the statistics. The music is the major work that people are registering. Artists are registering their songs, both sound and video. Then, of course, film. We have lots of literary works. And I noticed, because I'm the one who does the approvals for the registration, I noticed a lot of software and apps also from very young people. Yeah, but artists are registering, yeah.
Shiro, wanted to ask you, what are the key components of a music licensing agreement? And it depends. Is it the same for an ad or for film or for TV? Is it the same?
They're similar. Really, they're the same. It's just what's going to go into the agreement that will vary in terms of, okay, this is for a commercial and this was for TV, but it's the same agreement. So what's the component of the agreement? Of course, it will have the details of both parties. Let me start with, if it was done, let's say, for example, by me or by a publisher, it will have the publisher's details, but it will also have the details of the rights holders, that is the artists. And, often something else that people don't know, rarely ever does one person own complete 100% rights to a song. There's going to be the producer, there's going to be someone who wrote the song, and sometimes you'll find the person, the composer, and then you'll find there's the singer, the performer who didn't write the song. So they're different rights holders. Though I've witnessed a lot of situations in Kenya where a lot of people are claiming 100%. And I'm like, hey, okay. But rarely is it ever 100%. So you'll have all those parties listed there and their percentage share. It will be there in the agreement. If it's 10%, 20%, 50% and the like. And then it will have the details of the terms of the license. So the terms will be the usage, what it's being used for. If it's an advert, if it's a TV, then it will have a TV show. It will have the name of the TV show or the film. And then it will have the territory. For example, if it's maybe an advert, it will probably just be for Kenya only. So the agreement will state that, but if it's Africa-wide, it will say Africa. If it's global, it will say global, or if it's Africa excluding Nigeria, for example. And then it will also have down to the specific terms like the duration of the song. Another thing, when you license a song, it has to have down to the specifics of how much of the song are they going to use. When you license a song, doesn't automatically mean someone should use your entire song. They have to specify how much of the song they're using, because that also speaks to the fee that they're going to pay. So for adverts, of course, the money is a lot more. And for adverts, usually they use mostly maximum 60 seconds of a song, and that can make you a lot of money. So it cannot be ambiguous. Don't just license a song without agreeing to how much of the song is being used, even down to what part of the song is being used. So that information will also be in the agreement, and also the term, how long the song will be used for. Like, for example, if it's an advert, it can't be forever. It shouldn't be forever. Or what the term we use is in perpetuity. It can't be in perpetuity for a commercial. So for commercials, mostly what we've seen is usually either the lease is like a month, and then so there's a month. So it's mostly 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Also, the different terms, 6 months, duration, they also inform how much money also you charge or you'll be paid. I think that's what pretty much covers all that information. That's what will be in agreement. And then it has to be signed by all parties. So each right holder doesn't have to sign as long as they give their consent. Let's say, for example, you're presented by a publisher. So the publisher's signature will be there on behalf of the rights holders. Of course, there'll have been prior communication showing that the rights holders have consented to the use and the terms. And then it has to be signed by both sides. If it's signed by one side, the agreement won't be in full effect.
Anyiko, allow me to add on to that, because then she's moved into contract. Yeah. First, there's a difference between licensing and assignment, which I saw in the copyright world. A lot of people don't know the difference. So an assignment is when you sell the copyright kabisa. That means you will not have the rights. You will only have the right to be known as whoever sang the song or wrote the song. That's a moral right. It doesn't go away. But the copyright now belongs to someone else, so they can do whatever they want and make money out of it. So it's like you build a house and you sell it. You no longer own the house, isn't it? But then licensing, as she was speaking, remember she said it has to be specific for what territory, for how long. You are allowing someone, you're giving permission to use the song for specific use, for specific territory, for specific, you have to be very specific when it comes to licensing. But it also has a term. Yeah, so it will be for a certain period of time. But Copyright Act has provided for licensing and assignment of copyright. And one of the things it talks about, if you didn't have a term in your licensing agreement, it will lapse after 3 years automatically. So that is in the law. So depending on the territory in which you're operating, you need to know what the copyright laws also talk about in terms of licensing. There's also a section that talks about assignment, that if you have done an assignment, you have to come and lodge it with the copyright board and you get a certificate of record. So when you're licensing and assigning, also make it your business to know what does the law say about 1, 2, 3. But as she was talking about the agreements are contracts, yeah? And a contract is just a legal document between 2 or more people. There could be 3, there could be 4. She broke it down well for us, the rights holders involved in a song, yeah? So you could find that there are more. In Kenya, by the way, usually all these people are one person. But legally, in a song, the law will see the author, composer. So the author is the person who writes the lyrics. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, blah, 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 blah. The person who writes is called the author. Then the composer is the person who put the tune. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. That's a composer. In Kenya, these 2 people are one. But out there, as she's telling you, sometimes they're different people. But the law sees 2 people. And then there's the performer, the one who...
Sorry to interject. What do you mean by in Kenya, these people are one?
That's a practice.
The practice.
In Kenya, you'll find I write the lyrics, I put the tune, so I am 2 people in one. And then I sing the song. So I'm still the performer. But the law is seeing 3 people because it could be different people. I could write the lyrics and call her and say, Shiro, put for me some tune here. She puts, and then we go to Eric and say, produce for us this song. And then you're like, we like Anyiko's voice. Where could you work your voice? So the law is seeing these 4 people. But practically in Kenya, how it works, these 4 people is the same person. Nowadays, people are even self-producing. So these 4 people is the same person, but the law is seeing 4 different people. So the law is saying whenever money is made, these 4 people must get the money. And that's why when we do our registration, if you're registering a song, on our portal, we'll ask you what percentage you own as who's the author, who's the composer, what percentage do you own? And this is supposed to be from the split sheet agreement, which again, many creatives don't usually have the split sheet, but you need to have the split sheet. So you need to tell us who's your producer, what is their percentage, author, composer, who's the performer, if it's a different person, but sometimes it's the same person. What I wanted to say with contracts, it's very important that you have basic features in a contract that you're signing that you have to look out for. So one, identification. It must be proper. Let me say that. Huwezi tumia stage name kwa contract, please. Because that person does not exist legally. Sindio? So you need to have a proper identification. Use your gava name, the one tunakujua nayo kwa ID. Use your proper identification. If it's a company, you need to see that that company is properly identified, including where you can find them, their registered office, physical. So you need to be careful about that. Secondly, the rights. What rights are you licensing out? They need to be properly spelled out. I could license my song for an ad, and I've said I don't want it used in Uganda. So if it's used in Uganda, it's a problem. It's a breach of the contract. So what is the offer? What is the right? What are you offering? What is that other person accepting? Yeah. What is the territory? You need to be clear about that. There has to be a clause on dispute resolution. What are we going to do if there's an issue? Do we go to court? Do we find a mediator? Do we find arbitration? But that should also be there. There's always a clause on the We call it in law consideration, but it is money. Ni pesa ngapi unalipwa, yeah? That has to be clear. Na kama unalipwa in bits, unalipwa royalties, ama hii ni one-off. Yeah. All those dynamics must be there in a contract. And then what the law calls a meeting of the minds. So you and I need to have understood what we are agreeing. You get? Sometimes you can be at cross purposes with someone. You assume they're saying this, they assume you're saying this. Yeah, let me give this very weird example. If a jama here, let's say him, he spots a kachik here, he says, Niaje, let me go with you home. Maybe in his mind, he's found a mboch. And in her mind, she's found a husband. Is that a meeting of the minds? No. Because huyu anafikiria amejishindia ameponyoka na mzee, huyu anafikiria amepata mbocha. So in that case, you'll say there's no meeting of the minds. If they signed a contract ati tunaenda home and it's not clear and their minds did not meet. So you must make sure you've understood each other and agreed. You have agreed. That's what the law calls a meeting of the mind. And this is where creatives usually have issues. They don't understand the contract. Sometimes it has fine print. Sometimes it has too much legalese. Alafu uja understand. So ulienda kwa close ya pesa. Tunakupea 1 million. Sign. But kumbe imesema your licensing, non-exclusive or exclusive license to us, all your rights of da-da-da-da-da, na ujui. So you have to make sure you understood the contract. Okay, let me put a rider there. Copyright Board has lawyers that also give free legal advice to creatives. Ukikuja Copyright Board, uulize, I want a wakili to help me soma this contract. We are available and we can help you with that. But make sure you understood the contract and you signed. The other thing, you must have the capacity. Yeah, they call it capacity and competency. For example, huwezi enda upige sherehe, kama uko mavitu, you start signing a contract. At that point, that contract can be nullified because you are not in your proper frame of mind to make a good decision. So kama mtu ni mgonjwa of unsound mind, ama umeenda Mathare kutafuta msanii akusainie contract, you can't. Be drunk, you shouldn't be high, you know, you shouldn't be sick, you shouldn't be under threat. Mtu amekushikia gun kwa kichwa, sign this contract. So remember, you must be at your best when you're signing that contract. Then it will have clauses. There's a clause they call force majeure, which means that if there's an act of God, so to speak, okay, uli sign contract, utakuja kunipigia show, sindio? Then there was an earthquake and you really cannot come. That is out of your hands. It's not your doing. I can't force you to perform that contract. So it has to have some features. You just need to look out that these features are there and that this contract is real. And then she said, sign. Kila mtu lazima assign. You can't sign one party. All parties must sign. And remember, when you're signing a contract, this is how we sign contracts. You sign on every page hapa chini. Because ukisign huku nyuma peke yake, I can go and change this page and put what I want. When you're signing a contract, you have to sign kila page uko down and then the final execution page uko nyuma.
I have a question that I want to pose to both you, Musyoka and Shiro. So, Shiro, I'm an artist. I'm always putting myself in the shoes of artists. I'm an artist and I'm looking for opportunities to license my music to a commercial, film, TV. Where do I even start? And for Musyoka, what kind of music is that music that works for licensing? I'm sure it depends for different avenues, but what kind of advice would you give in terms of the quality of this music we are talking about? And what advice would you give the artists who would like to get their music into licensing opportunities?
To answer the first one about what type of music is attractive, definitely hit songs are way easy to license. For example, I don't know if you've watched a movie called Nafsi. It's on Netflix. There's a scene where they're in the club and they're dancing to Drinks na Mayengs. So, of course, being a club scene, I mean, the director will choose a song that quite literally fits that scene. There's a movie by Nick Mutuma It's like this guy is having a house party in his house. So, it's a typical bachelor, you guy, my guy kind of talk. So, as I said initially, it's just an issue of potluck. You can't specifically say, I'm going to write this song in the hope that this director is going to license this song. But you write your music with a more commercial appeal and songs that speak to the people's emotions and scenarios. So if a director is looking for music that speaks to that particular scene, let your song be able to, fit into that sort of category. And I work a lot with Shia Publishing as one of their clients. And sometimes you get calls to submit music for Netflix and, TV shows. So the director will send a description of the scene that they have and the kind of language and music they have. So you just give them the music that you have and you just hope one of them works for the scene. So it's pretty much you are at the mercy of the director. It's their personal taste and personal choice that determines if your song is going to get picked or not.
But I'm guessing also if you're signed to a company like Shia Publishing, it helps. Because like you say, they might get requests from clientele who say, we're looking for this kind of music. And if you're signed to them, they can let you know. Does it work like that?
Yes, it does. But there's also something we call a cheat code, which is the audio libraries. So audio libraries are cheaper versions of commercial licensing. So you can specifically tailor music for Ethiopia. So you can do like 20 songs that touch on the different aspects, culture and vibe of, let's say, Kenya. So you'd have slow ones, you'd have maybe Kikuyu ones, you'd have coastal sounding, so that when somebody is working on a project for Kenya, maybe a food channel, a TV show, when they go to that music library, when they listen to that music, they can be like, oh, we're in Mombasa today, so they pick the Chakacha song. Oh, today we're in Morema, they'll pick the Dayo song, So libraries are cheat code. They don't make as much money, but they're consistent. And especially right now where digital content and digital content creation is very big, audio libraries and music libraries have literally come to save the day.
Before I answer about where do you start, maybe just from what Musyoka said when he was answering what kind of music do they look for. Yes, there's hit songs. So how it works, how I've seen it work in my experience in sync, licensing in the sync department is, so for Kenya, for example, if they're making films here and commercials, of course they want hit songs. Why? Because they want a song that's recognizable easily, especially for advertising. You want a song that will catch someone's attention and cause them to listen to this advert and in the long run sell whatever it is that they're selling for the brand. But globally, outside of your territory, you'll find I don't want to call them smaller songs, maybe mid-tier or maybe different genres. The ones they refer to like in America and Europe as indie, the independent artists, that kind of music that they make that's a bit different. Like the Afro soul kind of songs, they're very different sounding music where you find those artists, let's say, for example, here in Kenya, they don't get a lot of big gigs. They mostly do small band events and stuff like that. And maybe their music doesn't get big streaming numbers. You find that kind of music will do well for sync outside the region. I'll give an example of Tetushani. We've licensed 2 of Tetushani songs 3 times in South Africa. I know a lot of people don't be aware of this. We've licensed Africa's Sun twice and can't remember the name of the other song 3 times in South Africa for South African shows. One was for a TV show you guys might know called Blood and Water on Netflix. Yeah. So stuff like that. So that kind of music that you would think here like won't land in an advert or a Kenyan TV show, outside it might probably do well. Outside of the country, maybe in another country within Africa or even abroad. So you can actually, like Musyoka was saying about the music library, you can actually, you see the kind of music you create that you feel, I know artists and producers make a lot of music and some of it they feel is not like good enough to make the album or the EP or to release or doesn't maybe do very well for streaming. You can actually bundle that music and put it together and submit it to either a sync platform or a music supervisor or sign it to a publisher and they can put it on to a production music library. And that way, instead of the music just sitting there, at least there's a way for you to make money outside of it. It doesn't have to be Kenya. And then where to start is maybe one, sign up with a publisher. So we don't only wait for TV production companies and agencies to come to us with requests. We actively pitch your music. Like my department, not all we did 247, we're like a mini agency. We sit down, we listen to music. Like if you're signed with us and you have new music, we sit down, we listen to all the new music that has come from all the artists that we have, the roster we have, and then you'll hear different people go like, oh, this one would be good for this kind of film. This would be good for this and that. So we categorize them like that. Then we start pitching. We put up. So we have huge networks with music supervisors across the globe. We have networks of sync agencies across the globe, largely in Europe. They have many sync agencies that use a lot of African music. And you'd be surprised because we used to receive requests even for Rwandese music, Tanzania music, Kenyan coastal music, Congolese music, Ethiopian music. So yeah, there's a market for it. So maybe the first place start, maybe sign with a publisher, or if not, there are all these sync platforms. They're online. You can sign up and submit your music. Though I think a publisher would probably be your best bet because it's easier for tracking. Because another thing, I think maybe that would be in another part, Anyiko asked the question, once you've licensed your music, that money you're paid, that one-off fee, that's not where it ends. You're supposed to get royalties for the sync.
So maybe Sharon can, or maybe you can continue with that conversation in terms of the expectation. So if you sign, there is a one-off fee and also royalties. Yeah. And up until when? Because I remember last time we had this conversation, we were about writing music for TV and film, and we had Jim Chuchu talking about a recent documentary on Netflix that he did music scoring for all the music. I think it's called Know Your Gut or something of the sort. I mean, he talked about the one-off payment and that he's receiving royalties from Netflix, but he had to sign to an American international royalty collection body to receive his royalties. So if you can just break down that expectation for us.
Okay, so where it starts, so you come and there's a request for your music. So there's the fee. And then fee is negotiated. Usually you can negotiate it yourself if they approach you directly. But then if you're represented by a body like a publisher, we negotiate on your behalf. And by the way, we are very fierce about that. We don't play. We don't take small money. We fight for the artist. And then so we negotiate the fee. Then you pay that one-off fee. But after you pay the one-off fee, anytime, let's say it's an advert. So for adverts, at some point, the royalties will end because it's only for the life of that advert, that license when it's playing. So if the advert is on air for 6 months, you'll get royalties from radio, from TV, and because it's performance royalties, like your song is being performed as that ad is playing. So you'll get the royalties for that period. But for TV and film, mostly when we license for TV and film, we license in perpetuity because it's very difficult to take out a song from a film or from a TV show. For a TV series we license it for 1 year, but then this work will keep showing for years and years to come. So it keeps going. So we license in what we call in perpetuity. So as long as it's showing anywhere, it keeps playing, you keep getting paid. And how we're usually able to track that is that they're tracking systems. For example, I don't know what they use in Kenya, like the CMOs, the MCSKs and Camp Pavrisk. I don't know what they use to monitor, but for example, I'll use South Africa as an example because it's more established. They have one thing called Radio Monitor. Radio Monitor monitors anything that comes on radio. And it's so well built that even when it's not like a commercial song, it's just like for a producer, it's just beats. It can pick up and be able to say if Musyoka had submitted just like beats only, like a melody, it's able to pick up. And if we have his in the system, it's able to pair up and say, this is Musyoka's, and then he gets paid. That's why we even have a huge list, usually called ONI, undocumented works. So in the undocumented works, there's so many artists on there because the Radio Monitor is picking up, but these people are probably not registered with a publisher or anyone. So it's there. So it can't say whose it is for, but it's there, it's picking it up. But then nobody's collecting the money. So it's just sitting there with the collecting management organizations. So there are systems that monitor, even for, like Musyoka is a composer, right? He composes music for film and TV. He also gets paid royalties. So what someone like Musyoka does, he will submit what we call a cue sheet. A cue sheet has an information of all the music he has created and submitted for that film. And most of what like Musyoka will create for a film will be called an original composition. So it will be in the cue sheet. For example, again, in South Africa, there's a system called RECUE. RECUE has all the cue sheets that are out there because Musyoka will give the cue sheet to the production company that was dealing with that production, and then they put them on RECUE. So when you go on RECUE, you find all those cue sheets. But then that's speaking to the South and part of Africa. I don't know here, again, how it works. But the beauty of it is a lot of the TV shows that are created now will end up on either DSTV, which is multi-choice channels, or there'll be Showmax, there's Netflix. All those are covered. So the cue sheets will be found on RECUE and the like. So if you're a producer, composer, and you're scoring, they'll be able to find that there.
So I think we can go back to the licenses that you license for, yeah? So when you're licensing out your music, there are different licenses that you can grant. The master one, you're granting permission to use your recorded song. There's a sync one, you're granting permission to use your song with images, yeah? Like in TV shows and films. Then there's a mechanical license, you're granting permission to reproduce. And remember I said now like digital download is taken to be reproduction. And then there's a public performance. You're granting permission to play that music in public in whichever way, yeah? It could be on TV, on whatever. And then, of course, there's a print license where you can grant permission to reproduce printed lyrics of the music, yeah? A musician earns money when your song is used, when it is played, not just like when it's seated there. I like the question, the thing you said that you're not sure how it works in Kenya, because I'm also not aware of any systems they have to do the monitoring. So here, if you wanted to earn money for public performance, for all this reproduction, whatever mechanical license, you can do it on your own, but it's not easy. And that is the whole idea of CMOs, yeah? Because otherwise, it would mean each and every one of you, ukae chini, usikize radio zote, watch TV zote, utembee kwa matatu zote, you go to all bars and clubs, and any business that is playing music, just trying to listen, are they playing me? That's impossible, right? So the idea is that you all come together, you form an organization, then you tell the organization where tufanyie your kazi. And that's where the monitoring she was talking about comes in. They are supposed to monitor. Let me say the ideal situation of CMOs and how they work worldwide. They're supposed to monitor the use of your works. So they should be having those systems, because otherwise how are they going to know what is being played? I know at some point CMOs here were requesting media houses to give them logs.
Yeah, that's what they do, but that's not accurate, because how much music you're using as a radio station, how much music I'm playing equals to how much I have to pay for the music license as a broadcasting house, as a media house. Yeah. So they'll downplay how much music they actually played in order to pay a little less. So that means there are people whose music is being played and they're not getting paid.
Now, because of that, it creates a problem at distribution. Because if I don't know how much you were played, I don't know how much to pay you. I don't know how much your music made. So what will I do? I'll say I have 10 million to gawa and I have 10,000 members. Divide by 10 million, kila mtu apate 1,000 or whatever. And that is the problem. So I'm not able to do what we call scientific distribution. Because scientific distribution, I should be able to say, Musyoka was played 3 times in this station. He earned 20 bob here. He earned 40, he earned 50. And then he could be more famous than me. Hata mtu hajai nisikia, hata mama yangu ana wimbo yangu, but I am getting the same amount with him. So you see, the ideal situation actually should be you need to have the systems that do monitoring. So you're able to monitor the plays, you're able to know how much money was made, and that then will translate back to distribution. You're able to distribute correctly, scientifically, exactly what someone needs to get. So I ask the same question like you. I don't know what system here CMOs use, but I know out there, in fact, I worked for a CMO before that collected for publishers and authors in book, literary work. And we worked closely with a CMO in Norway. And those guys were so advanced to the point they collected money for authors that were not their members, but paid them. So they're able to tell Shiro, you're not our member, but your book made this amount of money, shika pesa yako. And they put that in the law. It's called an extended collective license. You collect for everybody, but you give them, whether they are your members or not. But here they'll tell you, if you're not our member, you need to come and claim the money. And sometimes they've collected for you and the money is there. So they say you need to come and claim, and they don't know, prove what and whatever. It's a little complicated. But out there, they're able to do that, yeah? When they collect for you, they will give you. They also collect for works that are called orphaned works. Orphaned works are works that the author is not known. So you may find this song, Namujui ni ya nani, but it has made money. They used to call it international development. They used to fund CMOs in Africa to grow. Because wameokota hiyo pesa iko. It's just that they do not know the person. She talked about works that are in public domain. Works that are in public domain are works that do not have copyright. And why would they not have copyright? Either it expired, and copyright expires 50 years after the death of the author. In Kenya. In the UK, it's 70. In the US, it's 70. So either copyright expired. Like hymns. If you look at the hymn books, they're always written, it was written in 18 or whatever. It means copyright expired. That's why anybody can sing that song. Or in the Copyright Act, it also allows you to denounce your copyright in a work if you want. You can say, utaki copyright. Yeah, but I always tell people, don't assume when you find anything online and you're able to download it, that it doesn't have copyright. I usually see with songs like here, a lot of our creatives, you can download their songs, yeah? But like Joyous Celebration, I love their music, but you can never download. Enter YouTube Skiza, then buy the CD at $10 or whatever. You can never download. But here you can. But now I will assume, because I can download, it is not covered under copyright. The rule of thumb is, anything you find online or wherever, assume it is covered under copyright until you prove otherwise. Just assume iko na copyright, and if I need it, I pay for it or I ask for the permission.
As someone who, is in the music industry, deals with a lot of artists, and you're on both sides. If we look at our industry in Kenya, what do you feel is missing, or is there anything missing in terms of the skill and knowledge gap in music licensing, and how can we bridge that gap?
From experience, definitely we need publishing companies. We really don't have publishing companies. And guys who say they're publishing companies here, they're just distributors of music. They're really not publishing per se, because they don't go out to pitch for work for clients. They don't curate playlists that are tailored for the creative agencies who are the main consumers of this music. So that's one of them. And then definitely the information gap of where the opportunities lie. And then the third thing I would say, maybe the market is still not ready for that kind of business model. One, because of the kind of budgets we operate with. But it's a growing market. I mean, when I look back at 15 years ago, when I started music, I knew nothing about publishing, about music licensing. So it's just growing, and the more content is being created, the more the opportunities are coming. Right now, we have so many films that are shown, and I remember 2 years ago at Kalasha, we had so many Kenyan films with so many Kenyan songs. And I mean, that means the opportunities are coming. The opportunities are growing. It's just we need to find investors and people who can sort of streamline and, harmonize the correlationship between the users of the music and the creators of the music, so that we have a system whereby, like, let's just reference like what happens in South Africa. The reason I signed with Shia, it's just to have that kind of professional access and control and management of my artistic works, because they have a model that works. Yeah. But then again, we also need to start writing music that suits television works and audiovisual works, not just any music works. I mean, I cannot pinpoint and say that you must write a song that looks like this, but these are language directors and creative agencies speak musically that, appeals for visuals.
Thank you so much, Shiro Mwendwa, Eric Musyoka, and Sharon Chahale Wata. I would like to also give a special shout out to the Kenya Copyright Board and the Goethe Institute Nairobi for the collaboration and partnership on this particular episode and this event that was spotlighting how to license your sound and music for ads, TV, and film. This was part 1 of our discussion. It's not done yet. We're going to be back next week with a part 2 of this discussion and conversation. So stick around in case you have any questions, feedback, or recommendations about what you'd like to hear on this podcast at an upcoming Industry Talks workshop. Leave your feedback with us. My social media is Anyiko Owoko. You can also catch us on Industry Talks and Anyiko TV. Until then, ciao, ciao.
VIP Access Season 5 is proudly supported by the Goethe Institute Nairobi.